So hey guys, last night I went and rented a U-Haul trailer, and this morning I'm gonna go pick up some cars. So we're out here picking up a 944 turbo. We're also going to be loading up all these wheels here. Check out what's over here in this shop. Some Maseratis. Looks to be about 4 of them in here.
Go.
Alright, so we got this car loaded now. And we're also going to be bringing back another 944 turbo. So we're also taking this turbo back to the shop as well. Since we have both cars loaded up, we're getting ready to head out now. Alright, he's towing one while I'm towing the other one. Guys, we just got these 944 turbos hauled back to the shop. They need a lot of work, and I'm going to be going over what they need when I get back. Right now I need to take the U-Haul trailer back, and when I get back to the shop, we'll start digging into these cars and I'll show you what's going on with those. Alright guys, I just returned to U-Haul, so I have a little time now to talk about these cars before we start working on them. This first car here is a blue 1986 turbo, and the main reason it isn't running is that it has a cracked oil pan. Luckily it came with one, so all we need to do is swap that one out. Then we're going to be doing the belts, rollers, water pump, seals, things like that. And this car will hopefully be running again. Then we're going to rebuild the brake calipers, and I believe he wants me to install a radio. As for the body, it's overall pretty straight. There are a lot of rock chips in it, a lot of scratches and things like that. There are also a few dents here and there, and the clear coat on the roof is completely peeling off, but that's nothing that a good paint job can't fix, and it doesn't look like it really needs any more than that. So here you can see the new oil pan we're going to be installing, and I'll go ahead and open the door here so that way you can look inside. So here's the back first. Seats don't look too bad. There are a few splits in them. Things like that. But it doesn't look too bad. Let's see, the radio's been cut out here, and the center console's broken, of course. And then we have the computers just laying here. So I was just told that this car only needed the oil pan replaced and it would run, but it looks like someone has gone through it. So there's no telling what else it's going to need. And over here we have this black 87 944 turbo, and this one was wrecked pretty hard. Alright guys, that's a quick look at these two cars. I can't wait to dig in, so let's get started. So alright guys, today we're going to start working on this blue 1986 turbo. We need to get under there and change the oil pan. As you can see, it doesn't look like it's sitting on any mounts, so I've got to get the engine raised up first, and in order to do that I need to remove this air box. As you can see, it looks like a rodent's been living in the engine bay, so I'm going to try and get that cleaned up as well. Alright, I have the engine raised up a little bit now. It's not as high as it should be, but it keeps wanting to bring the car with it. So I've been gently nudging the bumper here and hoping that the engine will stay here and the car will drop down. But I think it's stuck on something, so I'm not going to force it. I'm not sure if this engine was dropped like that in a hurry or it just sat like that a really long time, but you can see that there are a lot of these hoses that are just completely ripped in half down here, and there's more over here. But anyway, as you can see, I've got the intake out now and the air box. So there was a lot of oil in here. It's drained mostly out now, but you can see this intake pipe here, and there is still a lot of oil in there. You can see it destroyed this coupler here, sitting like that, and I think it bent this pipe from either being dropped or just sitting like that for so long. But anyway, there was a lot of stress on this pipe and a lot of these hoses, so we're gonna have to go through and replace a lot of this stuff. And as for the oil in the intake, I tried to remove this boot here to see if it was coming out of the turbo, but I don't have any way of getting in there right now without removing some of this stuff, and I thought it would just be easier to go ahead and remove the intake, since I'll probably go ahead and do the air oil separator seals regardless whether or not the turbo's leaking or not, because I don't want to end up with more oil in there. But hopefully I'll find out before the end of the day whether or not this is a turbo issue or it's the air oil separator seals. So I've got the intake manifold off now, and what I want to do is actually take this boot off the turbo here just to see if there's any oil in the turbo. There's no shaft play and it spins pretty good, but as you can see there is oil here, so that'll need to be investigated. So alright, we're done up top for now. I just wanted to inspect the turbo to see what's going on. Now I want to check out the oil pan. So we've got the car raised up now, and as you can see there are mounts on this car, but the cross member has been unbolted, so we're going to try and get that out. And as you can see, the A-arm there, it's just got a rod stuck through it. I believe someone had all this out at one point and just sort of gave up on it, so we're going to have to persevere and get this out today, get that cross member out, and then see how much work it's going to be to get this oil pan out with the engine in the car. It's alright, we've got everything apart on this side, and we're trying to remove the cross member. We need to disconnect this power steering hose here, and that's what James is doing. And I thought this car was an 86. I'm pretty sure that's what the guy told me it was, but if you can see there, that is the yellow wire for the oil level sender, and you can see it's blocked off there. And that got me curious, so I went over and looked at the VIN, and sure enough, this one is an 87 as well. So both of these cars are an 87. Alright, last night James got the cross member removed. Today we're dropping the crossover pipe that connects to the turbo. As for now, I have no reason to suspect that the turbo is actually leaking oil, since there isn't any shaft play and it spins nicely. So as you can see here, this pipe here actually connects to the air oil separator. So if this is leaking, then you're going to get oil in your turbo. So that's what I suspect it is at the moment. Alright, he's got all the bolts out over here. Now he's working on disconnecting it from the turbo. Alright, James almost has the crossover pipe removed now. I'm going to go ahead and start removing the belt cover so that way we can get in there to the belt. Alright guys, I got the belt cover off now, and tomorrow I'll get out here and remove these belts so that way I can get the new belts and rollers on here. At first glance, that balance shaft belt looks really strange. As you can see, it's not as wide as it should be. I'm not sure if there's something screwed up somewhere that's causing the belt to wear down like that, but that's sometimes the case. I've never seen one get that thin before. I've just seen the edges fray. But anyway, tomorrow I'll get these belts off and we'll investigate what's going on. And as for the oil pan, you can see that it's still on. I was hoping to have it off tonight, but unfortunately there is a bolt in the crossover pipe there that just doesn't want to come out. Let me see if I can get up underneath here and show you guys. If you've never had the pleasure of removing a crossover pipe, then count yourself lucky. They're not fun to remove. So basically the only thing that I can get in here is a wrench, and my wrench is only about this long and I can't get enough leverage on it. I can move it, but it's very slow and it just pops, and it doesn't want to break free. So tomorrow I'm going to try and go find a longer wrench, because when it does pop, it just pops right off there and you end up getting hurt. So I would like to get a breaker bar in there, but you have to have a really shallow socket because this bolt right here is in your way, and so the only thing you can really use is a wrench. But I'll show you the hole in the oil pan while I've got you here. So I was told that the oil pan was busted, but I didn't find it until a little while ago. So I removed this here to have a little bit more room, and you can see down in there. When you look up underneath here, it doesn't look that bad, but when you actually look through there, well, not that it doesn't look bad, but the hole doesn't look quite as massive underneath as it does when you look through this hole there. You can see it's quite large. So anyway, hopefully we'll get that bolt out and we'll get this crossover off tomorrow, so that way we can finally remove this oil pan. So last night we got all the bolts out of that crossover pipe except that one. It's very rare for us to get beaten by bolts, but there just isn't enough access in there to get the breaker bar, and we can't do much with it. So the only thing we could get in there was a wrench, and the 15mm wrench that I have just isn't long enough. I need to have one that's at least a foot long. So today I went and picked up this set here. It's an extreme access socket set, and I'm going to give this a try. Hopefully this will get that bolt out of there, and this will save us a lot of time in the future. So it fits in there perfectly, but I still had to add a little length to it. But other than that, it's working perfectly. Although it's going to take forever to get it out at this rate. Alright, so it's coming out now. It looks like this tool saved the day. So I have the crossover pipe off now, and I'll show you how it looks underneath here. You can see it opened up a lot more room. Unfortunately, I may have to remove this down pipe in order to change the air oil separator seals. So that also requires removing this heat shield. So I'm going to try working on that, and then I'm going to let James pull this oil pan off here. Alright, so James is underneath here unbolting the oil pan. So we got the oil pan out now, and everything looks really good. Let me go over here and show you the damage to the oil pan. Here's the oil pan, and you can see where it was struck. There are baffles keeping you from looking down in here from this way, but I'll try and flip it over so that way you can kind of see it there. So alright guys, today I got some parts in for the blue turbo. I'd actually just ordered these Sunday night, and then they shipped them yesterday, and then I got them today. So that was really faster than I expected to get them. But anyway, we have a timing belt here. We have a balance shaft belt. And then we have a balance shaft tensioner. And then I have some intake manifold gaskets. Then I have the upper and lower air oil separator seals. And then finally, an oil pan gasket. So this is just part of the order, and the rest should be coming in later this week. While a lot of parts did come in for this car, I'm still waiting for a lot more before I can start putting it back together. Before the oil pan goes on, I thought I'd go ahead and change the rod bearings, since I have no idea what kind of shape they're in, since I haven't driven the car before. And not to mention that since there was a big hole in the oil pan, there's no telling if this car was starved for oil. But in the meantime, while we're waiting on parts, we went ahead and got the belts and the water pump off and a few other things. So that way, once all the parts come in, we can just throw it back together. Tonight we need to go through and start really cleaning this up. You can see just how much trash is in the water pump there, and also down in the cooling system. So we got to get that cleaned out. You can see here that I've got the oil cooler housing removed. I'm going to be changing the seals because a buddy of mine with a turbo had his seals fail and ended up with the milkshake, just like you do on an NA. So I thought this was the best time to go ahead and do that as well. I'm also going to be changing the speed and reference sensors, so I'll go ahead and get those out today. You can see the wiring is all cracked up. Even though they look good, you can just barely touch them and they break apart. So once I get all this cleaned up, we should be able to get everything back together, and I'm going to put a bore scope down in there just to see what the cylinders look like. Again, I have no idea if this engine was run without any oil in it, and I just want to be very precautious. And I do need to change the air oil separator seals, and it's looking like the only way I'm going to be able to do that is to remove the turbo. So that's unfortunate, but I think it's got to be done, and I'll try and get that done tonight as well. While I have the water pump out of the way, I thought I'd go ahead and remove that piece that goes to the oil cooler. There's two seals on each side. One of the seals is still in the block, and I'm going to be using a plastic tool like this fuel line crimp to pull it out. Wasn't easy to pull out, but there it is. You can see this seal is completely shot there and definitely needs to be replaced, because it's only a matter of time before this is going to make a huge mess. So you'll just replace these like you would on an NA oil cooler and stick this back in the block, then you'll put the plate back on there. I'm going to go ahead and remove some of the sludge that's in the cooling system here. You can see there's a lot of rust. So this is telling me, for the most part, that there was probably not a lot of coolant ran in this engine. It was probably straight water for the most part. Be sure that you always try and get as close to 50-50 mix as you can, or it will cause this metal on the back of the water pump to rust and corrode like that, and then you're going to get a huge mess like that inside your cooling system. And that's going to end up in your radiator eventually and clog it up. So you always want to make sure that you mix the coolant properly. So alright guys, last night I got the engine block cleaned off a little bit, and today we got some more parts in. And the other day I saw a meme where it said somewhere out there the shipping company is kicking your parts around, and that looks to be the case with this box. I'm not sure exactly what happened to it, but I did get it in 2 days, so it was pretty quick. I'll go ahead and open this up. Alright, let's see what we got here. We have a new oil filter, new speed and reference sensors, new rod bearings, a new engine seal kit. We have all the new seals and all the new sleeves for the balance shafts and things like that. And I have a new gasket for the oil cooler plate. And I have new seals for that oil cooler. Then I have some new seals. One of these is for the front main seal where the sleeve goes in, and the other one's just a spare, but I may need it in case I remove the turbo. I have a new Waller thermostat here. I have two coolant hoses. Then I have some exhaust seals here. This one here is for the two-piece crossover. So it comes down and then this goes between the section that goes to the wastegate. And then this one here is what goes between it and the wastegate. And then I have 3 rings here. And these are for the crossover pipe. So these two, for instance, would be between the header and the crossover pipe, and this would be between the crossover pipe and the turbo. And that's it. So hopefully we get started on this car now. I'm still waiting for a few more parts, and they should be in a few days. Alright, I got a few new parts in. I got a new gasket here, and I have some new seals. I'm going to go ahead and try and get this back together today. See, these just crumbled apart. You're gonna make sure you clean this out really well. Once you have it cleaned up pretty good, then you're ready to put your new seals on. You want to take some oil and put that on here. Once you have it lubricated, then you can go ahead and insert it back into the block. So once I got the new seals and gasket installed, I went ahead and put the cover back on here. You can see that I had to align it using my oprv alignment tool. And you want to make sure that it's nice and loose. And don't try and do this with the oprv itself, because you will be putting tons of force on it, which could break it. Once everything's aligned, you can see just how easily this unscrews. And you're just going to pull it out. And you're ready to install your oprv. Alright, now that I got the oil cooler seals changed, I'm going to go ahead and replace these speed and reference sensors. Alright, James is over here cleaning off all the water pump gasket material so we can get the new one on. And I'm going to go underneath here and replace the rod bearings. Alright, I'm removing the rod bearings, and you can see these are some that I removed here. So, glad we caught these in time. Alright, James got the water pump gasket off, and he also got the end cap off the upper balance shaft, and now he's working on removing the lower balance shaft end cap. Alright guys, before we get started today, I thought I'd assemble this car canopy that was donated to me. It is second hand, but it came with the instructions and everything. When that blue car came in, the front suspension was messed up on it, so I couldn't roll it into the shop, so I just sort of had to start working on it right there. And while it's beautiful out here today, it's supposed to rain the rest of the week, and I don't need that slowing me down. So I'm going to try and get this assembled. I may not assemble the whole thing because this front section here is large enough that it may just keep the front half where I'll be working out of the rain, and then I'll worry about the rest of this later. Alright, while I was assembling the canopy, a box of parts came in, so let's see what we got here. I believe this is the new radio. So a new Sony head unit that came in. It's alright, I got the canopy up and that's just half of it, so as you can see it covers the car, so I really didn't have to put the whole thing together, and I didn't have enough room to anyway, so I just put the tarp on long ways here, and hopefully I'll keep any rain from coming in from the sides for now, and also block some of the sun to keep it a little cooler while I'm working in there. It's alright, I got the canopy up now and I'll be able to work in the shade. I've also got a fan here blowing on me, so I should be able to stay cooler now. The other night James got the balance shaft caps off. I've already got the seals changed on one. I need to do the lower one now, and I'm going to start throwing this thing together the best I can. Still waiting for a few parts. I still need the water pump and I still need the rollers, but I'm trying to get as much done as I can tonight. I got one of the rod bearings changed. I need to go ahead and do the rest of those as well. It's alright, I got the seals changed here. I'm going to wait until the water pump comes in tomorrow before I install this, so that way it'll be out of the way. And then I'll do the lower balance shaft seals here in a moment, and I'll go ahead and change the rod bearings while I'm down there. It's alright, next I'll be finishing up the rod bearings. I managed to get one change last night, but then James needed to get down here and remove the lower balance shaft cap, so I let him do that while I did other things. So now I need to get this done so we can get the oil pan put back on. It's alright, I have cylinder number 3's rod bearings out now, and you can see that they're just as badly damaged as cylinder 2 was. Now, I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, whether they were oil starved or some of that aluminum from the busted oil pan got sucked into them, but the cylinders look to be in pretty good condition from what I can see with the borescope, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but I'm just glad we caught this in time. So as you can see, the crankshaft is in excellent condition, so that's good news. I'm going to be installing standard bearings, since standard bearings is what I removed here. These were likely the original bearings, so I doubt that anything's ever been worked on under here, so I'm not going to bother plastic gauging this crankshaft. It's alright, here's the bearing that I removed, and here's the new one going in. As you can see, it says manufactured 7/86. Alright, I now have 1 and 4 bearings out now, and you can see those here. So I'm going to go ahead and get those replaced. It's alright, I've got all the new rod bearings in and the engine's back to TDC. So hopefully tomorrow I'll get the oil pan put back on. Alright, I got the rod bearings in, and I thought before it got too late I'd go ahead and remove the air oil separator. As you know, there is a bolt down there at the bottom, and while I have it loose, I can't really get it out. So I need to get this heat shield out of the way, and there's no way to remove it without first removing this down pipe, and it's actually easier to just go ahead and remove the entire turbo. So that's what I've got to do. So I'll go down here and show you guys what I'm doing. So to unbolt the turbo, you're going to find 2 bolts under the mount here. You can see one of them there, and then the other one is right over here. You can see it there. So I have both of these loose, and I actually need to go up top and remove the oil feed. And rather than trying to undo the nuts on the back of the turbo itself, I've removed the 3 nuts here on the down pipe, or at least I've got them loose. So you can see them here, and this one back here is a little tricky to access. I can get the light back there, and actually the best way to do that one is use a 15 millimeter with a universal, and it'll come right off. I also use the breaker bar, so you can see nut comes right off, and then I'll remove this one here, and then this one. I'm honestly trying to catch them, but trying to record at the same time isn't easy. So anyway, I'm going to go up top and remove the oil feed from the turbo. Then I'll remove these two bolts here under the mount. As I mentioned, they're already loose. So once that's done, I should be able to lift the turbo off. So everything looks with the turbo removed. I should just be able to reach down here and remove this heat shield. Set that aside, and now I have easy access to the air oil separator. So there's a quick look at the turbo. It's just going to live in the shop for now. As I mentioned, there's little to no shaft play on this turbo, and it spins really nicely. Now, there was a lot of oil in the intake, but I don't really think it was from this turbo. I think it's from the air oil separator, perhaps. They were overfilling it in the hopes to get home with that busted oil pan. But anyway, I did give the owner an option for me to send this off and have it inspected, but we're working on a tight budget, and since the turbo seems to be in good condition, we're going to just kind of pass right now. But the option's still open just in case he wants to, because I'd really hate to do all this work and have the turbo out only to find out that it smokes later on. So alright, I got the turbo drained out and I went ahead and masked everything off. I don't want to lose anything down in there. But most of the oil looks like it was in the J boot, so I would think that if the turbo itself was actually leaking, it would stay right here in the compressor and you wouldn't end up with so much of it in the J boot. So that's what leads me to believe that it's actually the air oil separator seals. So as I mentioned, most of the oil is actually here in the J boot, so that leads me to believe that most of it's coming from the air oil separator hose here. So I'm going to be removing the air oil separator now, and I've got the exhaust blocked off so that way I can't lose anything down in there. So this is the next project, and hopefully I'll stop the oil leak. Alright guys, today we got even more parts in. This one here is from Pelican Parts. It looks like we have our rollers. This one is the roller for the auto tensioner. This one here is the roller for the water pump. Here is the oil pump sleeve. This one here is the roller for the balance shaft belt, the idler. And then here, of course, I have the water pump. Being that it's a turbo, I'm going to need the hole here. check out the gaskets. Since the last time I got one of the gaskets was ripped. This gasket's in good shape. Came with the O-ring. Of course, I have O-rings in stock that I could probably use. Put this back in there before it gets damaged. And then let's see here. Yes, it has the hole down in there for the turbo model. If not, then I have a few brand new ones as well. So there you go. Today I need to finish up what I was working with last night, and so I'm going to start by finally removing the air oil separator. Alright, I have the oil filler neck out now, and you can see just how everything looks. I'll be cleaning all that out before reinstalling it. And I'm also going to be replacing this little boot here, since you can see it's all cracked up and this was really loose right here. Luckily, I keep these in stock. So alright, I've got all the trash removed down in there, and being that this is a budget build, I'm not going to try and clean all this up and add man hours to it. So it's got to go back together pretty much the way it is. So now I'm going to go ahead and change the seals and get this back together. Alright, I just got the air oil separator installed. I got some of the heat shields back on as well. I was really hoping that I wouldn't have to remove the turbo, but it did make this job so much easier. Alright, I got the front of the engine cleaned up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and replace the seals on the lower balance shaft cap and then get that on before installing the water pump. Alright, all the old seals are out and the new ones are in. Alright, I have the lower balance shaft assembled now, so I'm going to go ahead and install the front main seal here. Alright, I have the front main seal in now. Next I'll be installing the oil pump drive sleeve. Alright, everything's reassembled down there, so I'm going to go ahead and install the water pump now. So next I'll be installing the water pump, and I figured I'd just go ahead and assemble as much as I can here on the bench. So here's our new water pump. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and install the new thermostat. Early 944s with the square dash use a Waller 80 Celsius thermostat. Later cars use a Waller 83 Celsius thermostat. And there's also a difference between this ridge inside here where the thermostat sits. So it's all going to depend on your water pump, which seal you're going to use. I'm going to need the thicker seal here. So once you have your thermostat installed, you'll next want to install your snap ring, and here I have an assortment of snap ring pliers. If you're just looking for a cheap set, then these here served me well, but they are really flimsy. The last time I went to install one of these circlips, they just folded in half, so they're trash now. I picked up this set, which is a little more durable, and they work really well. Unfortunately, they're not much help if you need to install a thermostat with the water pump in the car though. So I went to Harbor Freight and found these and then filed the ends down so that way I could replace thermostats with the water pump in place, and they just work like that there. These are probably the strongest set that I have, and they work great. So anyway, I'm going to install the snap ring here. There you go. When everything's installed, it should be very snug down in there. Next, I'll go ahead and put the guard on and make sure that this part is down at the bottom here. And I'm not going to put it on too tight because I may take it off when I go to install the belt. I just want to make sure that everything is here. And on the 944 turbos, you have a thermostat that goes in this hole here like that there. And it was missing on the other water pump, but luckily I keep them in stock. So you're going to take your O-ring here and insert it like you do on an NA with a block off plate. It's hard to see, but there is a hole down in there. And then you're going to install it just like that. So as for the bolts, what I'll do is I'll snug down the bottom one here, but keep in mind that the power steering line comes across and connects to the top one with a clamp. So I'm just going to thread it in there loosely like that so that way I don't lose it. And that's pretty much it. Let's go install it. It's alright, I have the block cleaned off, so I'm going to go ahead and install the new water pump. Alright, I have the gasket on now, and something that I wanted to mention was that if you own a turbocharged car, you want to put the tiny thermostat in this plastic housing here and not insert it into the water pump itself, because you want the turbo to tell it when to open up and not the coolant that's inside the engine. Alright, I now have the water pump installed. So alright guys, I thought next I would go ahead and install the oil pan. You can see that I have several of them sitting out here. This one of course is the one that came off the car, so it has that large hole in it. And here's the replacement pan that came with the car, but you can see it's pretty beat up as well. Not to mention it's an earlier pan that doesn't have the oil level sender. So I asked the owner what he wanted to do, and he said that if I had a later pan with the oil level sender, he would rather have that. So I have these two pans here, and I'll be cleaning one of them up, most likely this one here, and using that one instead. So I'll go ahead and flip this one over here and let you guys look at it. But as you can see, this pan is in perfect condition. Alright, last night I got this oil pan cleaned up. You can see it looks really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and install the gasket, and we're going to try and get it on. Alright, the new oil pan is on. Next I'll torque it down. So I've got the oil pan torqued down now. I'm going to go ahead and install the oil level sender and then the turbo drain on the other side, and I think that's going to do it for tonight. So alright, I have the oil level sender installed now, and I'll go ahead and plug it in. So next I'll be installing the turbo drain tube, and as you can see, this oil pan's originally off an NA car, so I'll need to remove this plug first. Alright, the oil pan is now completely installed. The original issue with this car was that it had a hole in the oil pan, and it is now replaced. Sorry guys, this morning some parts came in. I'm hoping to get the turbo and the belts on today, so I figured I'd go ahead and get this open so we can see what we got. Alright, so I have some oprv seals, and basically I like to keep these around, so I ordered a lot of them. Then I have a oil drain seal for the turbo, and then I have a crush ring for the turbo down pipe, and I have an upper seal for the turbo oil feed. And I have some aluminum crush rings for the turbo oil feed. Then I have a rear cam tower seal here. And then I have a quart gasket for the rear cam tower seal. And so now I should be able to get both those installed. Alright, so on the 944 turbo, instead of gaskets, you have these crush rings, and they can be really hard to remove. So today I need to get this one off since I'm replacing all of them. And I found that the easiest way to do this is to use a flathead screwdriver and just use the edge of it and then hammer it into the O-ring, and that's going to make it spin, and then you'll push down on it and it's going to lift the other edge up. So, I'm going to put this in the center of the O-ring. You can see it spinning there. And then that's going to pop the other end up. Just use a pick, pick it up just like that. So basically, you can see here where I put the edge like that into the O-ring, and then I hammered it, and it spun around at first, but the more I hammered it, this side lifted up. And that's the easiest way that I know to remove these crush rings. Before you install your new O-ring, what you want to do is just take a pick and make sure everything's cleaned out. Next, you'll take your new O-ring and you're going to install it with this side up and the side with this crease in it on the bottom. Next, I'll go ahead and install the new turbo oil seal. Just going to pop the old one out like that. And then install your new one. And now I'm ready to put the turbo back in. The turbo is mostly in now, and James is down here installing the starter while I'm up here installing the belts. So alright, we have all the new seals installed on our crossover pipe, so now we're getting ready to install it. So alright guys, last night I worked on installing the belts. I had the timing belt on, and like I mentioned in other videos, you need to double check the tension with your auto tensioner. The last auto tensioner that I used set the belt perfectly, but this one was setting it way too tight, so you got to watch out for that. And then me and James also worked on installing the crossover pipe, and today I'm just going to install the turbo oil seal here. So alright guys, I got the new seal installed. Well, we've done a lot to this car. There is still much more that we need to do, so we'll just pick it up here next time to see the second part. Be sure to like and subscribe. I also try and upload videos like this every week. And come join us on Facebook. I'll put a link in the description below. I also want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, since these videos would not be possible without you. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.